Today, I would like to talk to you about mandatory drug testing in high schools and explain to you why I think it's a good thing. As a student at Hayden High School, I was subject to mandatory random drug tests for 4 years. I think that this is an important topic for students to consider because it affects our learning and social environment while we are in school. High schools and even junior highs have been considering mandatory drug testing for students for over 20 years. Still, it does not seem that there is a general consensus of whether or not it is effective in eliminating drug use by students. Let me begin by telling you why I think high schools, and perhaps even junior highs, should have mandatory random drug tests for students. I think drugs are a serious problem in high schools, and we should do everything possible to help students avoid taking drugs. I think drug testing can be one thing to help students say no to drug use. Schools must make testing random, or students will believe that if they are tested once, that they won't be tested again, especially in big schools. If this happens, random drug testing will no longer be a detriment to drug use by students. My high school did random drug testing by taking a hair sample. I was only drug tested one time in 4 years. A lot of other students were only drug tested once also, and they knew once they were drug tested, it was very unlikely that they would be tested again that year. It won't stop them from using drugs. There is also some high schools that tell their students when they are going to conduct mandatory random drug tests. When this happens, students who are using drugs just plan to miss school that day so that they cannot be the ones of the students who get tested, and because they know that they're going to fail. While I was in high school, I saw a lot of kids going to parties and abusing alcohol and other drugs. I thought that they could have used help when trying to avoid these problems. If they would have been identified during drug testing, their parents and other adults would have been notified of their drugs used, and they would have had some help trying to avoid drugs. I also think that college students should be required to take mandatory drug tests because there are a lot of college students and athletes out there that take drugs to help enhance their performance and how they play. There is no way that we can stop all the students from using drugs, but if we make a good dent on the population of people who use drugs, it will make a huge impact. Just saying that a school has mandatory drug tests makes students and student athletes want to not do drugs because they know that if they get caught, they could lose their college scholarships. If schools say that they have mandatory drug testing, but they follow through and do the testing, or the students will know that they can do drugs again. In 1995, the United States Supreme Court ruled that drug testing for high school students and athletes was constitutional, and some districts expanded their policies to include the middle schools. Today, many schools do drug tests not just with athletes, but also with the general population. The decision of whether or not to have mandatory drug testing programs should be made by the school administration and the parents. Why do schools want to have mandatory drug testing, and what should they consider? Common drug testing methods used in schools are hair, urine, blood, and saliva. Which students will be tested? Entire student body or just athletes? What are the parents' views on mandatory drug testing in schools? Many approve as they feel it will help prevent drug use and will help them learn if they are a child using drugs. Mandatory drug testing of high school students is not an invasion of their personal rights. Schools should also consider drug education along with drug testing programs. How successful has mandatory drug testing in schools been in eliminating drug problems? The research result on how effective drug testing is in preventing drugs is not very conclusive. Perhaps the best reason for having drug testing in high schools is to help prevent students from ever beginning to use drugs. A study conducted by the National Center for Education Evaluation around 2007 and 2008 concluded that knowledge of the consequences of being caught in a drug testing at schools may help students say no to drugs. In conclusion, I would like for all of you to consider the positive aspects of mandatory drug testing of high school students. Our goal should be to prevent drugs use among high school students. Helping students avoid drugs in high schools will help them have a more positive life and increase the probability of them not using drugs in the future. Remember, mandatory drug testing in high school is not a serious invasion of student rights and can be a positive factor in helping save lives. That's my speech. I hope you like it.